Welcome to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success. I'm also excited to share my book, Straight from the Admissions Office, a review of my biggest takeaways from the first few hundred podcast episodes. It's packed with direct insights from admissions professionals and practical tips to help students and their families navigate the college admissions process. You can find all of the information in the show notes. Welcome to The Cap, where we are here to speak with college reps and other professionals in the field of college admissions to help answer all your questions and guide you through every step of the process. So if you're serious about college admissions, you've come to the right place. Are you ready? Let's talk about it. And now, here's your host, Dr. John Durante. Welcome to The Cap, the College Admissions Process Podcast. I am your host, John Durante, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce to you today Scott Anderson, who's an admissions representative at the University of Kansas. Now, I'm very excited because we finally have the University of Kansas here along with Scott. Scott, thank you so much for this opportunity. How you doing today?
I am great. Rock chalk to everybody out there in Jayhawk land. We're excited to be here as well. University of Kansas is a great place, and nothing more for me than talking about the university that I love with everything in my soul.
Fantastic. Well, our listeners definitely want to hear more about the university and all the great things that you have to offer. So, Scott, since this is our first conversation on the podcast, could you start by giving us a big picture overview of the wonderful University of Kansas, both academically, socially, and even geographically? What makes the University of Kansas stand out among public flagship universities?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. First, just a little bit about me, just because it's kind of a unique story, if you will. I'm a graduate of KU. I graduated from KU in '92, and I met my wife here, so that was awesome. And then I went into public education. I was a public school teacher in Kansas City for 30 years. And then I retired in 22 and sat on my couch for about, a couple weeks. And my wife's like, please go do something. You're driving me nuts. So I called my alma mater and I said, look, I'd love to come recruit the next generation of Jayhawks. I've spent my whole career around high school students, and I just had my own 2 children go here. So I felt like I had a really good connection with both students and parents. And they had me come up, and I got the job right on the spot. And I've been here the last 3 years. Start my 4th admission cycle, and super excited. But I'm guessing your viewers don't, care about my life story. So let's talk a little bit about KU. So University of Kansas, for those who do not know, is located in Lawrence, Kansas. We are a big Division I university. We are part of the Big 12 Conference, one of the Power 4 conferences. Here at KU in Lawrence proper, we have about 22,000 undergrads, throw in about 5,000 grad students. We have about 27,000 students here on our Lawrence campus. We do have a couple of satellite, particularly our hospital campuses in Kansas City and Salina. We're well over 30,000 when you do all of our off-campus sites as well. Just a couple of things about KU. We, and I'm sure your viewers don't know this, but you probably do, John, that unfortunately, higher ed is kind of on the decline. Fewer and fewer people are going to college. And because of the academic cliff that I'm sure you've talked about many times in your podcast happening, there's just a smaller pool. KU has bucked that trend. For 3 straight years, we have had our 3 largest freshman classes in the 60-year history of our institution. Now, full disclosure, I've been here for all 3 of those. So if you could pass that along to my boss and reminder of that, that would be fantastic. But no, we're really excited that even though higher ed's on the decline, KU is on the upswing. And when I say upswing, we didn't break record by like 10 students or even 100. When I started here, the target goal freshman was 4,500. My first year, we hit 5,200. Year 2, 5,300. And this year we're about 5,100. So we are shattering those numbers. So we're super excited about that. I'll get, a little deeper here, but just a few other things about KU. So we always like to point out three big differences to our listeners and to our visitors. We are a member of the AAU, the Association of American Universities. There's 5,000 universities in the United States approximately. Only 71 are members of the AAU, and we are one of those. And only 38 are public schools. A lot of them are highly selective schools like Georgetown, Stanford, Harvard, etc. So we're really an elite academic company. We are a tier one research institution, and not just our STEM kids. Like everybody's involved in STEM. My daughter was a journalism major. She did a lot of research on the effects of social media, on advertising marketing strategies. My son was a business major. He did a lot. He was here during COVID. He did a lot on the failure of the supply chain because he was a supply chain major. So academically, we have that. We're also a big study abroad school. Nationally, I think study abroad's like 10%. Here at KU, it's about 33% of our students study abroad, which we really, really love. But we also just are a really super fun campus, deep in tradition. The Jayhawk national brand, it's the only Jayhawk out there. We love that. Like a lot of schools, I know we'll probably talk about this later, some of our traditions and things like that. We're located between Topeka, our state capital, and Kansas City Metroplex. So, yeah, we are an amazing institution, and I'm looking forward to sharing more and more throughout this podcast.
Well, thank you so much for the overview. Number one, you're located in the beautiful city of Lawrence, Kansas. You're a big-time D1 school in the Big 12 Conference, 22,000 approximate undergraduate students, and you have 5,000, again, approximately graduate students. KU is on the upswing in terms of your freshman class. You talked about how, although there's a decline, not at KU, you've been up for the last 3 years. 33% of your students study abroad, and you have deep traditions, which we will definitely unpackage because we want to hear more about Jayhawks Nation. Now, Scott, are there any recent updates at KU, whether academic, social, or in terms of your facilities, that prospective students and their families should know about?
Yeah, so one of the big things that's been updated, this is a couple of years old. And again, we'll get into academics and scholarships later, but I do want to mention one of the big changes we made about the time I started was we went to test optional for admissions, and our scholarships, our automatic freshman merit scholarships, are based solely on a student's GPA. Some of our professional schools, business, engineering, etc., some of them have some scholarships based on test scores, but ours is automatic. You apply, you get accepted. Financial aid immediately reviews your GPA, and we award a merit scholarship based on that. But the thing that we are most proud, the biggest update, is we have, in the last 2 years, built a new $450 million new football stadium. Last year, we actually had to play in Kansas City at Arrowhead because we wanted our stadium to stay right at the footprint on our campus, right at the base of the Campanile, which is our big bell tower and hill. We wanted it there. So we are excited. On August 23rd, we're going to open that new stadium against Fresno State. But what makes it a little bit unique is, yes, everybody's got great football stadiums. Well, we're excited to have a great football stadium, but we're also attached to it, built a conference center that the university and the city of Lawrence will share together. Ultimately, phase 2 will include a hotel, so we'll be able to hold conventions and everything right there at the stadium with the conference center and everything. So super, super excited about that phase. Just excited about the stadium. One other one, I mean, we have lots of updates in a lot of different areas, but I don't want to go too deep. Our business school did just purchase what was kind of our old coffee shop, big coffee shop, standalone coffee shop on our campus, and they're going to convert that into an entrepreneurial center. So students can start, figuring out that entrepreneur pathway of like how to start a business and all that stuff, and do it in real time rather than just in classrooms, lecture halls, etc. So we're really excited about that. But as an athletics guy, obviously that stadium is going to be magical. What's really cool also is we hold our graduation in that stadium. Even through construction last year, even the cranes and everything else, we still held graduation there last year, a year ago, and this year for that matter, because it's that important to our students to graduate in that stadium. So very excited about all of that.
Well, we appreciate that. And there's definitely a lot of updates. First of all, the $450 million new football stadium, which must be phenomenal.
Yep.
And I appreciate you talking about different parts of the overall application. You went test optional, and in terms of your scholarships, they're based solely on the GPA, which leads me to a question regarding the GPA. When evaluating the GPA in coursework, does KU recalculate GPAs or rely on what's reported on the transcript? And how do you weigh honors, AP, or IB, or even dual enrollment courses within each student's academic context? And of course, what I mean is that you're evaluating applications from hundreds, if not thousands, of different high schools.
Sure. So we use a 4.0 scale. So if a student's on a 4.0 scale, we're going to use whatever it says on their transcript. One thing about KU, I know some universities do, but I know a lot of them do not. KU does, in fact, honor weighted GPA. So if a student has, say, for example, a 3.6 unweighted, but they take a bunch of AP, IB, dual credit, whatever, and has some crazy 4.6, KU's going to honor that because we want to celebrate and reward students for taking challenging courses. 4.0 is our base. We will not change a GPA for a student. So, for example, let's say a student comes from a high school that doesn't do weighted grades. We will go by whatever it is on that GPA. We'll go by whatever that high school uses. That is the one we'll use. Now, if they come from a school that uses a 5-point scale, a 6-point scale, I work with one school that has a 100-point scale. Our processing team has a conversion rate, and everything will then get reconverted to a 4.0 scale for admissions, scholarships, etc. All of those things. And again, we'll take all your AP scores, your IB scores. We have a chart, basically a 3 or better in AP and pretty much a 4 or better in most IB courses. A student will receive credit for all of those.
Well, we appreciate that. You spoke clearly about the fact that KU is, in fact, on a 4.0 scale. So, students, if your high school provides a GPA based on a 4.0 scale, that is exactly what KU will use. And, Scott, I appreciate you explaining how you do look at weighted grades and the importance in your overall review process. Now, you mentioned earlier that you went test optional. How should students decide whether submitting standardized test scores will strengthen their overall application?
Yeah. So, as a former high school teacher, I'm very much pro test. Now, again, research shows us that kids that do better with GPA than ACT scores statistically will do better. As I've always said, kids with higher GPAs know how to play school. They understand the grind of education, and they do better than kids that just have high test scores. But again, if you have both, good for you. You have won that lottery. But again, I still encourage students to take the test. For example, at KU, we'll get into the admissions requirements and all of that, but some of our professional schools do require a test score. For example, engineering is going to want a math ACT or SAT score to determine if you're eligible to get in, because it is obviously math heavy, and they want to make sure that you can handle that level of work. Plus, whether it's within the university, particularly our campus partners, or more commonly with some local community scholarships, some organizations still do want that test score. So I always tell students, at least take it once. I know here in Kansas and also where I worked in the state of Missouri, they do have one yearly state test for all juniors that is free. So definitely would take advantage of that. And maybe take, a Saturday test, for example, as well. But you just kind of never know. And you may like, well, I'm not going to go into engineering, or, well, you might switch your major. There's a lot of things. So at least take it once, have that on file so that if you do need it down the road, you do have that score in place.
Well, I definitely agree with the advice that students, you should absolutely study for those standardized tests and definitely go for it. And I also appreciate the fact that you mentioned that, yes, you are test optional. However, If you're applying to some of the more competitive majors, such as engineering, that's where test scores are required. So, students, it's very important for you to hear what was just said because even though a school says that they're test optional, if you're applying to the engineering majors, perhaps the nursing majors out there, they may actually require test scores, even though the school in general is test optional. So, make sure you do your research. Now, I know we touched upon a lot of different parts of the overall application, but can you walk us through KU's admissions review process, especially in terms of what factors are most important and whether the process is holistic or primarily academic at KU?
Okay, so it's kind of in its simplest terms, it is strictly GPA based. We have lots of questions, all kinds of things that we ask on the application. But for our assured admissions, if you have a 3.25 GPA or better, again, weighted or unweighted, whichever's higher, or you have a 21 ACT or a 1060 SAT with a 2.0 GPA, you will automatically be admitted into the University of Kansas. Now, if you want to do engineering or business, like we talked about earlier, first you'll be accepted into the university under liberal arts. Then we pass it over to them to review whether, like in engineering, you need that math ACT score, or in the School of Business, they have a couple of different criteria. They have one where if you have a certain GPA, i.e., 3.4 or better, you're automatically in, or they have a scale where on one axis it's GPA, the other axis it's test score, and then meet up there determines whether you're in or not. Now, let's say you don't meet that criteria of 3.25, you're, 3.1 or 2.9 or whatever, then KU will go to a holistic view of the application. We'll look at test scores, GPA, classes taken, clubs, all of those different things to determine whether a student will be admitted. We believe here at KU, we want to be an institution that is welcoming to everyone. Everybody has different academic situations, first gen versus 10th generation of students or whatever. So we want to make our admissions, very transparent. And sometimes students, particularly students that believe a highly selective school is where they want to be, and sometimes they get a little turned off by that 3.25 GPA. Then I quickly remind them that we have one of the best honors programs in the United States. It's one of the oldest honors program, and it is very selective. It does involve short answers and essays. So first they get accepted in the university, and then the honors will then review those short answer and essays for those who do want to go that route. So I like that KU has kind of the best of both worlds. We're very inclusive and want, all kinds of students to come. But if you want that rigor and that, I guess that reputation of being highly selective, we also have that honors route to go as well.
Well, it definitely sounds like you have something for everyone, and I appreciate you mentioning the Honors College. However, what role, if any, do essays or letters of recommendation play in KU's typical application review? I'm not talking about the Honors College, but just, to get into the university itself. Are they optional? When might you recommend submitting them if, in fact, they are optional?
Great question. So prior to my coming here, we did have some short answers, some rec letters, and all of that stuff. We don't do any of that anymore. We do have one question on our application now. Basically, it's kind of, why do you want to go to college? What do you hope to get out of your college experience and things like that? We're trying to find a little bit out about students. But the reality is it's just kind of a short question. It does not affect one way or another. We just kind of trying to get some information about them. Like I said, we're very transparent, just straight up with that GPA. Unless you're below that, then we do kind of go to more things. Now, when short answers and essays do come into play, is if a student is denied admissions to KU. And that obviously happens. We have an appeal process where then there is some short answers and essays. And they talk about maybe like why they struggled in high school. Maybe it was, COVID, or maybe their freshman year, their parents got a divorce. We kind of want to hear what was wrong and what you were doing differently, and why now you think a college education, particularly at the University of Kansas, is going to be a good fit for you. So we incorporate those into the appeals, the honors program. But again, we're a very straightforward GPA-based admissions process.
Well, I appreciate how clear you have definitely made that. And I know you mentioned it earlier, but please repeat, Scott, how large is your incoming first year class? And how do institutional priorities like geographic diversity or in state versus out of state balance shape KU's enrollment strategies from year to year?
Yeah, it's a great question. We talked about this a little bit earlier. The last 3 years, we've had our three largest freshman classes. I remember my interview 3 years ago. I'm like, what does success look like in this job? And they're like, well, freshman class around 4,400 to 4,500 is a great year for us. Well, our first year, we hit it out of the park, 5,200, backed it up 5,300, and this year we're going to be 5,100. So, big thing. Now, when I was here and when my children were here, I mean, maybe I was a little bit naive. We are Kansas, quote unquote, flyover country, whatever you want to call it. We don't have cool mountains to ski on. We don't have beaches to lay on. So I just kind of assumed like, oh, probably 80, 90% of the students are from Kansas and like 10% are from out of state. I knew some students here were out of state, but I didn't think it was that many. That is not the case at the University of Kansas. 45%, nearly half of our students come from states other than Kansas. And again, as I said, I'm a true Kansan. I've lived here my whole life, and I'm very proud to be a Kansan. But geographically, we're not the coolest place on the earth. Yet, thousands and thousands of students from all 50 states and over 110 countries come to Lawrence, Kansas to make it their home for 4, 5, 6 years, spent on their programs. And I think that says a lot. So we really strategize. We have reps, probably like most universities, that are assigned to every state. But we also have some very targeted markets. We have regional reps that live full time in a multitude of cities: Dallas, Denver, Omaha, Minneapolis, 2 reps in Chicago, St. Louis. We have people that live in those cities to recruit those areas because those are big alumni centers for us. And so those are obviously very targeted markets. Obviously, we take students from all 50 states, but those are the target areas that we have. And then, of course, our reps are strategized throughout all of the Kansas area as well. Kansas City, St. Louis, obviously big markets for us as well. But we make a very serious effort to recruit out-of-state students. And I don't know the exact percentage, but I know that historically, students that come from out of state to go to the University of Kansas, many of them will stay in the state, particularly Kansas City, Wichita, et cetera, to stay here and end up their careers here because they love that so much. So about 55% of our students come from the state of Kansas, 45% come from out of state. And then those merit scholarships that we talked about earlier, we have 5 tiers of them for in-state students. 5 tiers. The GPAs are the same for the tiers. Obviously, the amounts are dramatically different for our out-of-state to kind of overcome some of that out-of-state tuition cost. So yes, we make a very strong push to get students from all the states.
Well, that's awesome. And speaking of the students, Scott, how would you describe the student experience at KU and what kinds of students tend to really thrive at Kansas in terms of academic mindset, involvement, and that awesome community fit?
Yeah. So that is super important. A quick little story. My wife and I went here. We love KU. Both our children grew up in this environment. They went to games and all that stuff. And so Christmas morning, my daughter's senior year in high school, and we had taken her on a lot of tours of schools, and she handed her mother and I a gift. We opened it up. Yeah, that sweatshirt did not say the University of Kansas. Very disappointed. She was scared off by the size and all of those things. So she went to a small college to begin with and very quickly realized that she was not having the same experiences that her parents had so lovingly talked about to her whole life. So she came back here for an official tour, not go to the football stadium or Allen Fieldhouse, met with the School of Journalism, and began to realize that, yes, in fact, even though KU is this big school, you're going to find your community. It sounds kind of hokey. I'm sure others have said it as well. It is a lot easier to make a big school small than a small school big. And that's what KU does great. We make KU into very small communities. So the kids that thrive here, and I think KU does a great job of helping even the most introverted students find those communities, those small family groups. We have 500 clubs. We do something called Union Fest the weekend before school starts or after the students move in. They block off the street in front of our student union and all 500 clubs table there and give out free shirts and candy and food and help students find. And when I say clubs, I mean, we've got all the regulars that every school has. We've also got a couple wackadoo ones. I mean, we have a Taylor Swift club. We have, my favorite though is what's called Flapjacks and Lumberjacks. I think it's the third Saturday of each month. They all wear flannel shirts and they go out to the local IHOP here in Lawrence and they all have breakfast together and eat a million pancakes. So again, there is something for everybody in finding that community, finding a group that you will identify with, whether that's based on race, religion, common interest, whatever. We do a really good job of helping those students find that. So back to your initial question, who thrives here? Those who embrace those communities. And I know some kids have to get a little bit out of their comfort zone, but KU really does help find those kids. I don't know what the national average is on retention. I can only speak for KU, but about 88% of our freshmen that come here come back their sophomore year to come to stay here and go to school. We're very proud that that's a high stat. I don't know if that's good compared to everybody else, but I think that's a very good number. And that says a lot about how we make kids feel welcome and a part of our community. I think the city of Lawrence does that a great job. I've had a lot of my friends send their children to other universities, and not to be overly stereotypical, but in a lot of college towns, you got the college kids on one side, the townies on the other, and there's not much interaction. It is not like that here at all. Our community of Lawrence and the university all were founded at the same time in 1865, and they just embrace the university. You go in any store, restaurant, whatever here in Lawrence, it's KU everywhere. It is a big part. I don't know how much you know, John, but we're pretty big into athletics, particularly basketball. We've won 6 national titles, most recently in 2022. And unlike a lot of universities where students storm their campus when great things happen, not here at KU. We storm down the hill and celebrate in the middle of our town on Mass Street. Most recently in 2022, we won our national title. Police estimate the crowd that night when we won at 80,000 people.
Wow.
20,000 of them were our students and 60,000 were residents of Lawrence and surrounding communities all celebrating together. And so there is this really close-knit vibe here that the students are welcome in the community, they're welcome at the university, and we really think we do a good job of helping students find those smaller family-like units, communities within the university, whether that's through sorority life, fraternity life, intramurals, athletics, clubs, whatever, even professional clubs, that every student will find their place here.
Well, I appreciate the description of your amazing community, and I love what you said. It's easier to make a big school seem small, but much harder to make a small school feel large. And thank you so much for sharing your daughter's experience. My oldest daughter had a similar experience, and you mentioned your 88% retention rate. The national average is at 70%, so
Wow.
KU is definitely doing great things. Now, another thing, Scott, that a lot of students and their families want to talk about or want to hear about is financial aid. So, being such a central concern for so many families, can you share how, for example, merit-based scholarships and need-based aid work at KU and how students can position themselves for maximum consideration?
Yeah. So we kind of touched upon this earlier, and I knew we'd come back to this, so I didn't go too deep into it. But yeah, when a student applies to KU, we have to have a transcript. It doesn't even have to be official initially. Obviously, before they come to KU, we're going to need an official one, but they can upload a copy of their transcript. It has to be a PDF. It can't be a screenshot. And we use that for admissions. And then as soon as the student's admitted, immediately goes to financial aid and they review their GPA a second time for those merit scholarships. So put it in perspective, a resident of Kansas, there are 5 tiers. If a student, for example, gets our top scholarship, which is 395 or better, and again, keep in mind, we do honor weighted grades. So the 395, that seems so high. Well, we have kids with 4.6, 4.7, 4.8, crazy numbers because of AP and IB and all that. If a Kansas resident were to get that, that is $5,000 a year. That will pay basically half of their tuition. Same is true for an out-of-state student. We have 5 tiers as well. If a out-of-state student were to get that highest level, 395 or better, they will get $16,000 a year, and that puts them nearly, not exactly, but very close to an in-state level. And I think that's another reason why our out-of-state numbers are so high is kids from many states. I don't want to throw any states under the bus. It is cheaper for them to go out of state to the University of Kansas than it is for them to go in-state to their in-state institutions because our scholarships are so very, very high. So that's step one. That's that. We throw that out there. And I always tell families, hey, have your kid apply early. You have to do it before December 1st. And then no matter what anybody says, you don't have to commit to a university till May 1st. Many do earlier because they want to start housing and all of that. But I always tell families, apply to all the schools, do the Common App, do whatever you're going to do. And then after you have all these over winter break or whatever, then you can make your plus minus chart, your pro con chart, whatever. Go on your visits if you haven't already, and then make those decisions. And so I think that's a critical piece. So get that application in, get your financial aid, step one. Step two, obviously, KU, we encourage our families to file a FAFSA. We do not require it, but we highly encourage it. I don't fully understand how the government and financial aid works in that world too much. Quick story. My daughter, her first year, applied for financial aid. All she got were a bunch of loans, which of course we had to take because as a school teacher, I needed that help. 2 years later, her little brother applied for financial aid and he got a bunch of aid. Needless to say, my daughter Taylor was not happy that he got all this extra aid. Well, it turns out now that I work in higher ed, I understand a little bit more. The government institutions realize you've got 2 kids in college at once. That's just another factor. It's not just straightforward how much money you make and your need. There are a lot of factors that go into financial aid, particularly through FAFSA. So I always tell families, at least do it once. If you don't want to do it ever again, don't, but at least do it because you never know what you might get. So that's the second area of financial aid. Third area of financial aid, and I think I'm better suited to argue this point than most people coming from, working in public schools for 30 years. And that is those local scholarships that are available within your high school counseling office. And I always joke with kids. I'm like, look, I get it. I worked in high schools. Most counselors probably barely know your name. The only time you ever see them is when you go in there to enroll and they sign your card or whatever. But if you make an appointment and sit down with them and explain, hey, I want to go to the University of Kansas. It's going to cost my family X amount of dollars. Can you help me? Counselors love that. A, they love that you're coming to them. And B, they like helping students find those dollars. And a lot of them, from my experience, and John, I know you're in public education as well, a lot of them go unapplied for because nobody even knew about it. But if you ask about these things, there's chances to get those. But there's Kiwanis clubs and Coca-Cola and all that stuff. And here at KU, you can just stack all these scholarships on top of your merit-based, your FAFSA aid, all that. We have kids that basically their education's free. Granted, that's an anomaly. But if you're willing to take the time to fill out those locally based scholarships, there is a lot of money out there. So merit-based, FAFSA, and those local scholarships are kind of our 3 tiers of scholarship here at KU.
Well, you really gave a mouthful of information. And again, I always mention that in the show notes. Of course, I'm going to put the KU Office of Undergraduate Admissions. But Scott, if there are any other resources that you want to share, those that you just mentioned or anything else, please provide them to me and I'll put the links in the show notes. Now, you talked about a lot of great things, a lot of supports for your students, but what kinds of academic support systems or first-year experience programs does KU offer to help students transition successfully from the many high schools that they're coming from to the awesome KU community?
Yeah, I'm going to be honest. I wish I'd have known about all these when I was here 30 plus years ago. I'm assuming they existed back then, but I was just a dumb college kid trying to have fun and do all that stuff. Luckily, I learned a lot of these through my own children who were much better at seeking out help. And now that I work here, I know all of these and I really share it with families. We have so much support here for our students. It starts with basically what I call and what is called the KU Access Center. So those students that have an IEP or a 504 can get that to that department and they can get that all transferred here. So we don't want any students to feel like, well, after high school, the IEPs and 504s don't help me. We will help students with those. We also have an amazing advising center. Each student, of course, is assigned an advisor that will help them navigate their degree, or in a lot of cases, let's be honest, students multiple degrees because they change multiple times. So we have that amazing academic advising. We have a writing center full-time with students that will evaluate your writing, give you feedback before you hand those papers in. But one of the things that I really love best is two organizations. TRIO is a national thing. I know that's national, but we have TRIO here, and we also have something called Hawk Link here. Both of them are targeted to our first-gen populations and students of color, for that matter as well, to really help those students that don't maybe have that support behind them with parents, families that have been through the experience, to really help them. And they build a very strong community. Both of them have offices on campus where students can just pop in and hang out there and do homework. They always have snacks and stuff for them. HawkLink actually does a program for students to move in a week early. So they're not here when thousands of kids are moving in. They're here with just those to help them. And then they show them to all their classes and do all those things to really, really help them find their way around our campus and to learn those things. Both those organizations are phenomenal to help, particularly those students that this is a whole new world for not just them, but their families. Just some other things that we have. KU puts a high emphasis on mental health. So we also have psychological services that are available to all of our students. I know mental health over the last probably 5 years has really become a big thing in higher ed, but we were there very early. We really want to help our students, particularly those that might be struggling a little bit through this transition. It is tough. I don't care how good of family support. I mean, it's still a big transition for a lot of students, particularly out of state and things like that. So we have those psychological services that are available to them as well. We also have a career center, and they're great because both of my kids took advantage of that through mock interviews, helping them get their resumes together, write cover letters. They always have postings of businesses or whatever they're going to be on campus and things like that. So that's awesome as well. And then we also have something, I know this isn't really academic, but I think it's important for families to know. As a father, this was important to me, especially when I sent my daughter off to school. We have something called Safe Ride on our campus. 24 hours a day, doesn't matter what time, where you're at, whatever. If you don't feel safe, or unfortunately, we know college kids get a little out of hand, no questions asked. You call the number, we will come and pick you up and take you back to your dorm, your apartment, whatever. Where it's not a judgment thing. We want our kids to be safe, and that's really, really important to us. So academically, we have tons of resources, but also those non-academic pieces to help kids with those transition from comfortability of being at home with your families in a high school where you know everybody to this big D1 school that can seem a little bit scary to those who've never navigated something like that.
Well, I appreciate the comprehensive answer, and it goes to show that you and your colleagues are very mindful of admitting the right students to your awesome KU community. But perhaps even more important, it's that when the students are there, you're very mindful of providing resources such as mental health resources, academic resources, and so much more. I also appreciate how you talked about your career center, which I think is really important because it's not just supporting them through those 4 years, but also helping them with the next step. And of course, a topic that doesn't come up with every podcast episode is the safety on campuses. So The Safe Ride program is something that is truly phenomenal. I know that there are a lot of colleges and universities that offer it. And I repeat it again because students and families, when you're on a tour, certainly ask questions about safety in terms of what if you're at the library late at night and you need someone to walk you or give you a ride to your dorm room. Does the university have anything in place? I think those are great questions. This, Scott, has been an awesome conversation. Before we get to the last question, I always like to ask, is there a question that I didn't ask you today that you wish I had? Or is there something else you'd love to share with the students, families, and counselors that are listening about KU?
Yeah, we've talked a lot about it, I think, in generalities, but I think the one thing I really want to mention, we've talked a lot about academics and all the great things we have there. I want our families out there to know that KU is just an amazing place to go to school. It's super fun. And I know sometimes parents are like, yeah, that's great, but I want my kids to get a degree. Well, you're going to get an awesome degree from an amazing academic institution, but your students are also just going to have an amazing experience here. KU has so many traditions. We are rich in history here. We have this amazing dynamic to our university through our culture. It's a very inclusive university. We have about 28%, I believe, of students from diverse backgrounds, which we're very proud of. We also have just an amazing uh, sense of pride in our university. We have 16 Division I sports. Obviously, most people, if know anything about KU and they see this Jayhawk wherever I travel, it's like, oh, basketball. Everybody knows our great basketball history, from Bill Self to Fog Allen to Wilt Chamberlain to all that. But we also, we have everything. We have a women's soccer team that were the Big 12 champs last year. Our baseball team made the tournament this year. Travis Goff, our athletics director, came on board 4 or 5 years ago, has really, changed the dynamic of our athletics program. My dream of a football stadium was just that until Travis came here a few years ago, and our football coach, Lance Leipold, just so many great things. And our volleyball program, we really put a high emphasis on everything. Obviously, basketball and football gets the attention, but we put a lot. Our athletic facilities for all of our sports are off the charts. And again, we just have this great, rich tradition of just rock chalking everybody. That you can't go anywhere with somebody going rock chalk. It is a part of who we are. We have 400,000 alums around the world, and we're just a very proud alumni base. I know I sometimes say it. My boss hates it when I say this, but we're almost obnoxious to be perfectly honest. We just love our school so much, and not just for the 4 years we're here, forever and ever. People just wear KU stuff everywhere, and it's just a great place to go. As I used to tell my students, I taught juniors and seniors in high school, and there were plenty of them that loved high school. They loved every minute of high school. They're there from 7 in the morning till 11 at night, every club, dance, sport, whatever. And there were also students in my class that hated high school. They looked at their watch every 30 seconds. When's the bell going to ring? But the thing is, whether you love or hate high school, you go home at the end of the day and it's over. College is if you go away to school, is a 24-hour day experience. Yes, it better be academically strong like KU, but it also needs to be a community and a university setting that is so welcoming, so fun, so energizing that you just want to be here all the time. Our students come back early, though, well, except the dorm kids, they can't move in. But we got students, it's third week, July. We got students already moving back onto campus. They've been at home a month or 6 weeks. They're bored already. They want to be back here because it is just such a thriving, fun, energizing community that just loves this university, loves everything about being a Jayhawk. And I want everybody out there to know that we are the most welcoming, fun, exciting, and I'll be honest, winning community when it comes to athletics that I can think of. And I'm super proud of that fact.
Well, the fact that you're proud, you love KU, and you're passionate about it definitely came throughout this entire conversation. Scott, you're awesome. Unfortunately, it does lead us to that last question, which is, what are your top 3 pieces of advice for students and their families who are preparing for the college admissions process?
Yeah, so I really thought about this. What would be some really deep advice I would give to families? It's what I give to them pretty much every day. One, start early. This is a perfect time. Your summer, by this time, it's almost August. You're probably bored. You're tired of going to the pool every day. Start working on those apps, whether that's direct application like we have at KU. It opened on July 1st, or you want to wait a couple more weeks and do that common app on August 1st. Start early. I know everybody's like, oh, I'll get to it this fall, but fall's going to roll around, homecoming, games, standardized tests, and all of a sudden it's December and you're like, oh my gosh, I haven't even started. So start early. And as I said earlier, get it all knocked out. Then once you get all your acceptance, set those on your nightstand and enjoy the fall. Enjoy all the fun stuff. Then come winter break or whatever, then you can kind of start figuring out the bigger picture. But you want to start early and stay on top of those dates. So that's my first piece. Second, and I know this is probably super cliche, but you need to find that right fit in a school. I love KU. It's my home. It always has been, but it's not for everybody. If you want to be a vet, yes, we have a pre-vet program, but probably not the best fit. You want to go to a school that has a vet program for you to go into. So those kinds of things. So you want to find the right fit. And I say there's three pieces to that fit. First, that academic fit. Make sure they have the degree that you want, and it's a program that you feel like you can thrive in. For example, at KU, we have aerospace engineering. Not everybody has aerospace. So you need to find that good academic fit that's going to challenge you and push you to newer heights that you maybe never even thought you could reach. Secondly, it needs to be a good financial fit. Yes, I love KU, but obviously financially, maybe it's not for everybody. We think we have a great scholarship and all. We talked about that earlier, but you don't want to go into $200,000 in debt to get an undergrad degree. I know college degrees are important, but that's just silly. If that's what your situation be. So find the school that's going to give you what you need, whether through like us, the GPA scholarships, or maybe you're more test minded, whatever. Find that good financial fit. And then third, it's got to be a good social fit. As I said earlier, you're going to spend 24 hours a day here. It needs to be a place where you can have fun. You've got your community, like-mindedness, whether that's through, like I said, through race, religion, clubs, activities. Find that social fit. So that second piece of advice, find that good fit. Academic, financial, and social. And then the third one, and I think this might be the most important piece of advice I can give, and I used to give it to my students all the time when I was a teacher. Visit campuses. Everybody's campus looks like the Taj Mahal on the internet. Everybody's campus looks like the greatest thing since sliced bread in their view books, their brochures. But until you actually step foot on that campus, you have no idea what it's like. I used to have kids that like, Mr. Harrison, I got into school X. And I'm like, great. That's fantastic. That's a great school. When did you go on your visit? Oh, I've never been there before. What? You've never even been to the school? No, I heard it's great. I'm going to go there. That's dumb. That's a dumb way to choose a school. You need to get around and walk around on a campus. You're going to spend every day there. You need to get out and see if it's a good fit for you. Walk around, talk to your student ambassador, talk to students. Maybe you're a Chick-fil-A head. Do they have a Chick-fil-A in your, I don't know, whatever. You need to find, but you can't do that until you actually step foot on campus. So again, those three pieces of advice: start early, find that good fit, and definitely visit your schools before you ultimately make any decision.
Well, those are tremendous pieces of advice. And Scott, it is clear that KU is so fortunate to have you, as were we, on this podcast episode. I can't thank you enough. You were awesome, Scott.
Rock chalk. Let's go Jayhawks.
Absolutely. Let's go Jayhawks. And thank you so much again, Scott. And to everyone out there, good luck with the college search. Take care all, and best wishes. Thank you for joining us on this episode of The CAP, the College Admissions Process Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. If you did, please don't forget to tell a friend and follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and wherever you listen to your podcasts. I am your host, John Durante, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode of The CAP. Thank you for listening to the College Admissions Process Podcast presented by Prep Expert. Prep Expert offers live online SAT and ACT courses with the best score guarantees, instructors, and curriculum. Go to prepexpert.com to guarantee your child's success.